party started. If you actually want a party, you should get out of here because we're going to talk about RTCs. No parties today. We're going to get low before we get high. But my name is Stephanie Barber. I am a local attorney and guardian ad litem program director here in Orange County, the Legal Aid Society. Bringing up the rear, the powerhouse for this presentation is Millie Sellers. If you are from Orange County or surrounding parts, you may know her as a great clinical utilization manager, all things fancy when it comes to credentials, clinician stuff, knowing RTCs, knowing SIPs, knowing FTGHs. Today, we're going to divide and conquer when it comes to the world of RTCs. This is going to be about what the inside looks like. We have this as an intermediate level training. We all know about suitabilities and MDTs. We're going to do a little bit of backstory. We're going to start from the beginning and work our way up, but really, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. What does it look like on the side of the RTC? I can tell you the boring legal bit. Millie's going to tell you the practical clinician bit of it. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. I will give you some full disclosure though. I said that we were going to play Jeopardy. I lied to you all. We're not going to play Jeopardy at all. We're just going to, we have candy and we have prizes. But we're going to just pass it. Yeah, pass it out. It's going to be fun.
We're not just going to sit here and go,
right. Yeah. That's really fun. Sure. Okay. So help yourselves. This is conversational. We have Q&A at the end, but really this is conversational. We want to keep you awake. We want to make this as fun as possible. And we get it. This is RTCs. This is not the luxurious life. So we want to try to make this as interesting as possible. And with that, Sally's got a question.
It would be helpful if you would use the mic. Pull it off.
you want to hear our big mouths?
Anyone else have any issue hearing me? Anyone else?
You also
Okay.
won't be recorded.
Okay.
That's
Not that.
It's a whole recording.
I'll go for the mic. I'll go for the mic.
So that's why you're working
We're also going to try our hardest to make sure that we respect your time and get you out of here on time today. So. Better? Okay. No problem. All right. Sally, you're going to regret this because 10 minutes into this, people are going to be like, why did you do this? She's talking crazy. Okay, so we have a mission today. We have 3 things that we really want to do today. We want to identify all of the laws that shape life inside of an RTC. I mean it, all of it, because really we're talking about the administrative code. This is administrative code heavy. We are going to explain how to best identify and then communicate with the key RTC staff that's really going to make a difference for you and your child when it comes to advocacy. It's all about identification, focusing on that one person, those 2 people, those few people, and then making sure that you get what you want based on your communications with them. And then learning how to share those advocacy tools with other people, because we want to help recreate this and make sure that we spread the knowledge, okay? There's a PowerPoint presentation on all of your seats. This is also online. We also have our contact information, so if something is not included in this and it's not answered later on, just know that you can get to us, and hopefully we can answer your questions at a later point in time. So let's start from the very beginning, a very good place to start. As I said, I'm going to do the boring law part. Millie's going to do the clinician, the part that really makes a difference for our kids part. So let's take it from the top. Florida statutes. When we talk about the law that really directs mental health services in the state of Florida for both adolescents and adults, we're talking about Chapter 394. But we are going to focus today on Chapter 39 and then the administrative code, because we know that we're talking about our kids in the dependency system, our kids in care. So that's our overarching Chapter 394, focus more on Chapter 39, and now let's get to the administrative section. AHCA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration. This is where we're going to spend a great amount of time today. When you think of AHCA, think about code enforcement in a way. Think about the people who are coming up with the policy for healthcare, they're coming up with the planning, and then they're the oversight people in large part. They manage Medicaid, they're responsible for licensing, they're even going into the facilities on a regular basis to make certain that the rules are being implemented and applied appropriately, okay? Then we have the administrative code. The administrative code is the good bit, it's the interesting part, it's the rabbit hole part where you can just go down and down and down and down and down. You have these laws, you have these rules, you have the code, and then you actually have to implement it. You have to do it. You have to have the day-to-day part. The administrative code shows us the day-to-day part. Of course, it's the how far away do the beds have to be? What does the food look like? How frequently is it served? We're going to get into that today to a pretty large extent. And then all of the citations are there for you guys to go and take a look if you have further questions about something, okay? Any questions so far? All right, let's do this. Okay, so the windup, the start. We talked about 39, we talked about 394. We know that residential treatment is not something that is for every child. When we talk about the definition of residential treatment, it's a placement for observation, diagnosis, or treatment of an emotional disturbance in a licensed residential treatment center. That's what we're talking about. It's not a surprise to anyone in this room. Everyone in this room knew that before I said it. I'm sorry, I did not mean to bore you, but I needed to say it because we had to start from the beginning. We're almost finished with the backstory. We know that when we talk about residential treatment, we are not talking about a sterile, cold facility. Residential treatment is supposed to do something for our kids. Residence is in the title. It is a residence in addition to meeting the emotional and behavioral needs of our kids who meet the requirements of being in a residential treatment center. There's a lot of other stuff that comes along with that. Childhood, adolescence, transitional living. We're going to talk about that today because that has to be part of the residential treatment experience. It's a fixed amount of time, but within that residence comes fun, and it comes liberties, and it comes age-appropriate activities. We're going to tell you about it. We're going to show you where to reference it within the law, and we're going to help you obtain it for your kids. When you think of residential treatment, do not automatically default to cold and sterile. It does not have to be that way. If we accept that we're overwhelmed and overworked and that sometimes the worst case scenario can be this, we're in a bad place. But we know that we can do better than this. So, remember the individualized element to residential treatment centers. That's really what we're going for here. If we use the laws and make them work for us, we can really get individual care for our kids. So, the individual care for our kids, again, comes from Chapter 39. It gives us a requirement for what we must do to regularly treat our kids and regularly have oversight over our kids. The treatment has to be individualized and it has to meet their mental health needs. When we talk about detail, this is what we're looking for when we're talking about all the reports, all of the data that we're getting for our kids. You are going to get voluminous reports, or you should get voluminous reports, or you are entitled to voluminous reports. At the end of the presentation, you're going to have a list of those voluminous reports that you get to receive. These are the things that automatically must be in those voluminous reports. As a matter of fact, these voluminous reports, most of them, the ones that are not child-specific, are already available at this day and time. You can ask the facility for the specifics about what life looks like, the meals. You can get a meal plan for the last 12 months on this very day. But know that these are all of the things that you get to walk out of the door with for your child. So, we talked about this being an intermediate training. We know that you have a multidisciplinary team staffing, the suitability, all of this other stuff. But we're finally going to get to the inside of the RTC, what life is like on the inside. Let's all see it on RTC. That's right. Do you need more chocolate? Is this the way this works? All right.
I was going to bring some pom-poms, but she told me no.
I'm sorry.
Let's all see the RTC.
Okay.
A nice little ring there.
Yeah, not too bad.
You have a question?
Yes. RTC and SICP is the same thing?
SIP placements. So they are actually, we're talking about a similar facility, but different types of kids and different classifications. Millie, do you want to take that one?
Yes, under RTC, there are two different classifications. There's SIPP SIP program, which is a statewide inpatient psychiatric program, and there's also STGH, which is a specialized therapeutic group home. Okay, and basically the difference with those is the SIP is going to be a locked facility, and it's going to be more intensive treatment, more intensive care. The STGH is a specialized therapeutic group home. It is not locked, but they will still get therapeutic treatment. So that's the main difference. The SIP is the highest level you can get, and then STGH, and then there's group homes, STFC2, STFC1, and then foster care.
And the really tricky thing that Millie and I were discussing is that when we talk about the administrative code and parts of Florida statutes, they just group them together. They glob them together. And so it makes it difficult to kind of tease out what applies when. Well, today we are talking about, for purposes of our kids in the dependency system, we are talking about residential treatment for those kids. Okay. So the mandatory publications, the things that you are definitely going to get. You're going to get access to what services the facility offers, what methods they use. You today can get your hands on an organizational chart of the people who work in the facility and how long they've been there and what their credentials are. Millie, do you see people requesting this, and is it easy to get your hands on this?
A lot of people don't request this, but because we're mostly a paperless society now, you can go to the website, to the program's website, and you can get all of this information. You can get the information on the different programs, on who the director is, on who the therapists are, their credentials, so most of that is online. If you do go to the facilities, they will have pamphlets that you can look at. If you're of a more concrete, hard copy person, you can get those as well through the facility.
The other thing that's pretty helpful for us as practitioners, we know that we're advocating for what a child expresses is what they want, and sometimes what is in their best interest, depending on our role. It is helpful sometimes to know the financial benefit that a facility is deriving for the services they provide for kids. So on any particular day, you can also get a list of what facilities are charging and what they receive for services. Is this something that you see people request?
I usually don't see this request, but I do know different facilities accept different insurance programs, and in order to get admitted to the facility, you do have to have a pre-authorization by the insurance company. So there isn't a request usually for money. Usually the hope is just that insurance covers it, because if it doesn't, you're probably looking at a good $700-800 a day. Yes.
Can our kids take a tour of a potential SIP placement?
Very good question. Actually, I just had a child do that the other day. The judge requested that she go to a facility because she stated that she wanted to be in the SIP, and she did go to a facility.
That's probably my client.
And it's a good thing. The code that's on the books right now really encourages doing things like that. Like, if you look at this and what the administrative code says that our kids should get, and says what their advocates and their guardians should be able to review ahead of time, it really reads like a menu of services. So if we take a look at some of the other things, like on this slide, fun. You get to know that a facility has certain magazines or books for your child and how frequently they come in. I know this is shocking. I mean, it's shocking that you can get this detail when it comes to a facility. They're required to keep it. The activities that are available, the frequency of those activities, and then there has to be an evaluation when every child comes in about what their level of engagement is going to be when it comes to these activities, as well as community involvement. One thing to dispel right off the bat is that life in an RTC does not mean life on the inside. There is this interplay with the real world, because RTC placement is in large part to equip our kids to process and handle the real world, in addition to the other emotional elements that they're facing. So it's important to think about these publications and these details and the things that you can come out with. If you really want to ask for it, you can get it. You can get paper, you can get volumes. Okay, so we know our kids. We work with our kids. Some of our kids are delights. Some of our kids are challenges. Most of our kids are all of those things at the same time. I have a question.
Yeah, sorry, you said you can get paper. Can I request it in a different format? Maybe
Oh, yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the administrative code doesn't specify the format that these come in. I think, and maybe Millie would be better to answer this, most facilities would be delighted to provide that in electronic form rather than
Yes.
paper.
are there any copy fees or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said, the last thing, because I couldn't hear what you said.
Copy fees, I was asking if there were any.
I am not certain of that answer. It may be up to the facility, but I do know that the administrative code does not specify that something has to be provided in print versus electronically. It may be a result of what the facility's needs are, but what is necessary is that they provide it to you upon you asking. So I would imagine that that would be done free of charge unless there's some major impediment to it that they can prove. Hope that answers your question. Okay. All right, sometimes these are our kids. We get everything in between, but the point is that our kids run the gamut, they run the spectrum. So this code also runs the gamut and it runs the spectrum. While certain services may be provided in the RTC does not mean that they're going to be accessible to our kids. Just because art is on premises does not mean that your child is going to have access to art. Just because O Magazine is at the facility does not mean your child may want to participate in reading O Magazine or maybe even should read it. It's there, it's available. We want you to know that it's there and that it's available, but we also want you to know how to access it when it's prudent. These are our kids too. Okay, so getting down to the nitty-gritty, the specifics, what you're gonna see. Furniture. There are requirements for what furniture needs to be in the facility at all times, accessible to our kids. So there are different parts of RTC code. There are parts of RTC code that apply to portions of the space where kids are not present and portions of the space where kids are present. We're kid present. What we're going to talk about is what the requirement is when we have kids present in the facility. Furniture. It has to be in decent shape. It has to be in good repair, and it has to be used for its original purpose. So this means that if you walk into your child's bedroom at the RTC, that they cannot have a long table that is doubling as their bed, or they can't have a folding table that's doubling as their dresser. If the intended purpose for that furniture was a folding table, it needs to be used as their folding table. Okay. Study areas, there are requirements for that. You have to have a table, you have to have a chair, you have to have lighting that's appropriate, and you also have to have bookshelves that are suitable. Guaranteed, these things are going to be in the study area. They must be in the study area by law. And then there has to be a room to speak in private, because life in a residential treatment center is about facilitation of healthy, responsible relationships and emotional and behavioral progress. So what does this look like in reality, Millie?
Well, I don't know if you all have heard of HIPAA. So when you're in an RTC, HIPAA is taken very, very seriously. So staff do not go up to a child and just start talking about their diagnosis, their medications, their family, what's going on. We take staff, or we take the clients into a separate room where there's a closed door, and you discuss certain things with them. You discuss, you do therapy with them, you discuss their situation, what their discharge plan is. So those kind of things are talked about in private, in closed doors. There should be a main area. Usually there's like a large main area, a multifunctional purpose room that you can go in, or there will be offices that the children can go in with the staff, and they can speak privately.
Okay. So this looks like a boring slide. It's one of my favorite slides, because this is the stuff that's really important to our kids. I also like conveying to my kids who are placed in RTCs what exactly they're going to expect. For some kids, having knowledge before they walk into a placement eases them, it calms them down. Sometimes, depending on your child, too much detail, maybe too much detail, and it may be overwhelming. But knowing your child, knowing how your child acts or reacts is going to be good for you to determine what you can share with them and to what level. Many of my kids like knowing that they're going to walk into a facility and there's going to be a clock on a wall. I can't tell them if it's going to be analog or if it's going to be digital, but I can tell them there's going to be a clock on the wall, and that if they want a physical calendar is going to be provided to them. I find this one incredibly important because what an RTC isn't is a casino. They need to know what is going on, inside and outside. They need to be present on this day. So that calendar is a really big thing for them, especially when we start to talk about the plans that are provided to them, treatment plans, and we talk about discharge. Some kids start to count those days. Some kids start to fit their behavior into lives, or some kids live for a birthday or a celebration or something that's coming up. And that calendar can be a big motivating factor. It seems little, it's really big. Bathrooms. 1-to-6 ratio. You have to have a bathroom that has all of the regular fixtures for each 6 children. You have to have one complete bathroom. Bedrooms. Bedrooms have to have this list fulfilled for certain. Kids, 0 through 12, we're just naming all of the kid ages, 0 through 12, cannot live with individuals who are older than that. Children cannot be room with adolescents by law. Adolescents cannot room with adults. So that must be very clearly separated. Separate sleeping areas in the state of Florida for boys and girls when it comes to residential treatment. We're talking about a room that is at least 50 square feet, 4 kids per room max. When we talk about a room, we're not talking about false walls. We're talking about floor to ceiling walls. No fake walls, no immediately kind of making something that shouldn't be a room. When we talk about rooms, these walls have to lead off of a main hallway. Yes, I see a question in the back.
But you're on this, but when we don't have these things, I know I've made objections or brought it up at hearings, and they go, oh yeah, we'll take care of that, but I've had kids with no lights in their room, or furniture with no handles on them.
It's inappropriate and it's wrong.
Blowing me off. What do I do if I'm blown off by the case manager?
Okay, you can, I'm sorry, you can go to administration of that certain facility. You can make a complaint with ACA, and ACA will go out and observe the facility.
This is included like it's a private home, I should say. Well, not private home, but it's a home.
It's not an RTC?
Treatment. They call it residential treatment, but they're in what I would consider more of a home-like setting.
So it's a group home.
Yes, although they only have a couple children, yes.
Okay, so maybe in STGH, we have a list of individuals who are on staff at the residential treatment center or at the later part of the presentation. It lists who does what. Also, we have some advocacy tools at the end of the presentation, when to go to court, when to go to this individual, when to go to that individual. And we can also speak with you afterward about licensing, because there's a huge difference between accountability for STGHs versus RTCs. We'd be happy to talk with you about your individual case after, for sure. Millie and I would love to do that. Okay, so all of these details are essential, and we know that sometimes they're not being met, and it's about what to do once you know what your kids are entitled to, how to get it for them. So this is what you can expect, what you can demand for them. Mandatory furnishings, dresser, pillow, blanket, everything that's appropriate for the seasons. Laundry, their sheets get laundered at least once a week. Personal touches to decorate their room, they get to do that. As long as it's in accordance with their treatment plan, they get to do that. A window in their room. There has to be a window in their room, and the window has to be operable. But this operable window doesn't mean that it needs to remain in operation for the entire duration of a child's stay there, because certain children, it may be best to not have them in a room with an operable window. So that window needs to be able to work. But there are things that can be done to make sure that the room is appropriate for that child, that particular child, based on that particular child's need. Millie, anything to add to that?
I just wanted to say that in the restrooms with the mirrors, they are non-breakable material, as well as with the windows, so the children can't break them and cut themselves.
Okay. So, clearly, based on the rules, sofa, old sofa, used to be a sofa in a different life, not an acceptable bed. Reality, this probably is not happening for our kids in residential treatment. This is not happening for me in my home.
I was going to say, how did you get a picture of my bedroom? She must have taken it through the window.
Reality. We are working on getting the very best reality that we can for our kids. So we know that we're not starting with that former picture, and we're not starting with the latter. Like, none of it. In between. All right. We're going to dip down for a bit, and then we're going to rebound for that with something a little bit better. We're going to go to seclusions. Restraints and seclusions. The seclusion room is something that is tricky for many people. Many of us as practitioners, legal practitioners, don't understand it. I do not have a medical background. I know that at certain points in times, seclusion has worked very well for some of my children, but I rely very heavily upon clinicians and professionals to tell me when it's going to work, but that's always done with my 2 cents, with my additions, based on what I know from my child, and advocacy based on what my child has reported to me or what I've experienced. So when we talk about a seclusion room, it is absolutely worth going to the administrative code and reading every bit of it when it comes to the seclusion room. It's an interesting read, and it's not particularly long, but there's some really great detail in there about a seclusion. By law, a seclusion room is a single room. It's at least 50 square feet, and it is meant to minimize a child's hiding, escape, or injury. So a seclusion room exists for the benefit of a child. It's meant to protect a child. It's not meant to punish a child. It's not meant to give staff members a break. It is for the child's protection. Certain things must also be present in this room. No electrical outlets. When you talk about a mattress, it has to be vinyl covered or plastic covered. There has to be a blanket, and that blanket has to be fire retardant. Millie can tell you in more detail what this practically looks like and how it's accessed.
So the seclusion room is usually utilized as one of our last resorts. So when we use the seclusion room, it's basically to help the client or help the child de-escalate. So what we will try to do is try to get them to de-escalate in one way or another on the unit, and if they will not de-escalate, then if they are a danger to themselves, a danger to others, then we would utilize the seclusion room. And that's where that fits in. And the question is, do you ever do therapy? No therapy in seclusion room. Seclusion room is a de-escalation. You talk about, a little bit of de-escalation, try to de-escalate them, but you're not going to try to bring up certain things with them or talk about mom and dad issues, talk about sister, because again, you don't want to escalate them and bring things up. So it's de-escalating, it's calming down, it's what are we going to do, what's going on, how can I help you, what do you need right now, what do you need from me, how can I help you, what's going on, what can we do to calm you down?
Any questions? Okay. So off of the seclusion room onto the everyday environment. What temperature is it when you walk into an RTC? If your child runs hot or runs cold, this is what you do to make sure that your child is okay. When you're talking about an RTC, during the waking hours, when a child is up, 72 to 82, no exceptions. When a child is sleeping, 62 or 68 to 82, no exceptions. That's the temperature. When we talk about water safety, we're in Florida, but it's not mandatory that there are pools. But when there are pools in facilities, these are the rules that must be followed. Continuous supervision, 100% of the time, on site. If the pool is outside, the staff member who's trained in water safety is outside with the individuals. No walking into a Florida room or even a room with a glass door. You must be on site. On site means there. Before kids are allowed to swim or participate in any activities involving water safety, they have to go through an assessment, and that assessment must be done by the staff member who has been trained in life-saving procedures or whomever the facility contracts that work out to. It is okay to have that work contracted. Laundry. Laundry is one of those things that to kids who are not in residential treatment sometimes does not seem like an amazing thing. Laundry can be an amazing thing for kids in RTCs. They get super pumped and excited when they get a chance to do their laundry. At least my kids do, the ones who are enabled to do laundry. Laundry has to be in a separate area from kids. It cannot be where they sleep. It cannot be where they hang out. It has to be separate because it involves electronics and water and all types of other issues. Kids can do their own laundry, however, if it's approved in the treatment plan. It's a life lesson, it's part of normalization, it's part of transition, it's part of all of these things. Sometimes it's even good memories for kids. So it's one of those things that you can specifically ask for your children, or just make sure it's in a treatment plan, or if it's not in a treatment plan, you can subsequently ask for it. Kids, if it's in their treatment plan or if they're permitted to do so, can do their laundry. They're not doing laundry for the other kids in the RTC. They're not doing laundry for the staff member. They're not doing laundry for the clinician or for the psychiatrist. They're doing their laundry. That's the way that it works. So how is this done, Millie?
Okay, depending on the facility, there's, in every facility, there's a schedule. So depending on the facility, if the child does their own, they will know what day they're scheduled to do their laundry, and the staff, direct care staff would monitor them, assist them with making sure they get it in the washer and the dryer right, folding it, putting it back on the bed, doing their own clothing. It's done once a week. If they do not allow the children to do it, then they will do that. The staff will do that during that specific day.
Okay. Questions about that?
And yes, kids wear their own clothing. We want them to make sure that they wear their own clothing so they feel as normal as possible.
Okay.
They're not all walking around in scrubs.
So this normalization, this temperature, the clothing, what the room looks like, how do you know if it's happening? You can see for yourself. You can go to an RTC for yourself. You have to schedule in advance, but you absolutely have access to your child. Number 2, you can ask your child what's going on, what's happening. Number 3, you can follow up with the staff members that we're going to identify later on in this presentation. And number 4, you can always tell the court your concerns, or just take the approach and do all of the above. All right, co-location. Co-location is one of those things where, our kids, when they've been in the dependency system for a little while, they have friends, their friends tell them things. You will have a child that you're prepping to go into an RTC, but they're going to tell you what life looks like because they're sure they know what life looks like. Co-location is one of those things that kids often get wrong. They think they have grand plans of hanging out with people, a friend who's in this SIP placement or a friend who's in this STGH. Co-location rules, simple, very clear. Co-location happens from an administrative perspective, but not from a residential perspective. So by co-location, you can have a residential treatment center and a specialized therapeutic group home on the same facility. As a matter of fact, that's why the administrative code talks about RTCs and STGHs together, because they can be together. But it does not mean that you can have a child from a residential treatment center walking into a rec room with a child from an STGH. Never the two shall meet when it comes to life inside of the facilities in which they reside. So when we talk about sharing things, you can share administration. You can have a psychiatrist who works in an RTC or an STGH. You can have housekeeping staff that works in both facilities. You can have food preparation staff who works in both facilities. But you cannot have kids walk from one facility to another facility at all. They cannot have access to each other.
Correct.
So,
because the RTC, again, is going to be locked, so the building is a locked building, and the STGH is not locked. So the kids can go off premises. Now, the RTC will have a location where the kids can go outside, and they'll have like a rec area, maybe a basketball area, a pool area, but again, there's going to be fencing around that, and staff is definitely going to be watching them all the time.
and that's part of normalization. So again, it's the residential elements that they cannot do together. For instance, school. Kids in RTCs and STGHs may go to the same school if they are in school outside of the facility, because we're not talking about residence, we're talking about education. Okay. clinical treatment. This is Millie's hot zone. This is all the seller's stuff. She's raring to go, which is good because over my head, much of this. We talk about treatment. Millie's going to tell you about the specific individualized child-centered treatment that we're really working to get for our kids. This is all going to come to you in a written plan, in 17 written plans, and 1 billion written plans. Millie, will you talk with us about this treatment that our kids are going to receive?
Absolutely. So when a child comes into care, they will have a biopsychosocial done, and that gathers all kinds of information about the child, mental health history, school history, family history, what their needs are, what their strengths are, what they enjoy. Another important piece is when they come in the facility, they will also fill out a piece of paper, a document that will say what makes them angry, what escalates them, how are you calmed down, what helps you to calm down. So staff will know if somebody gets triggered because, you touched me, I don't like to be touched. Well, okay, and then they will look at that paper and they'll try to figure out how to calm that kid down, how to figure out what de-escalation techniques to use. So those are done on every child as well. So there's the biopsychosocial, and then what the clinician will do and what the treatment team will do is look at the biopsychosocial, talk to the psychiatrist, there's a behavior analyst, which we'll get into later, and they develop the child's treatment plan based on that child's needs. Based on that child's needs. Okay, it's not going to be a cookie cutter. It's going to be, what does this child do? What needs does this child have? How can we meet those needs? How can we help regulate? How can we help this child in treatment? What kind of things does a child need to work on? Aggression, anger, depression, moods. What does this child need to work on? So the treatment plan is specific basically to that child, and it's reviewed every month. There's a treatment team meeting every month. So if you're involved with your child, you should be on those treatment team calls or basically at the facility for the treatment team monthly.
Millie, is there anyone that you recommend that we contact when it comes to initiating involvement in these treatment team meetings?
Case manager.
Okay.
I would call a case manager because they would know when those are, because case management is involved. I know our clinical UMs at our CBCs are involved when we have children in higher level of care. So I would definitely call the case manager. Or you can call your friendly clinical UM.
Like biopsychosocial, that usually happens before they get a new one, when they do an RTC. They had one previously, to get another one.
Yes.
Would that be available to their attorneys and other people?
Yes. Along with any other documentation? Yes.
Any?
Oh, okay.
That changes today.
Yeah.
All of this paper that we're talking about, it's if you represent that child as an attorney ad litem, as an attorney directly for the child, as a guardian ad litem, 100% of this information you have access to. So now that you know what it is, access directly from case management, directly from the facility or court.
Because that's where a lot of the information, or all of the information, is gathered to develop the treatment plan. Okay, so there's, it could be anywhere from a 4-page biopsychosocial to a 12-page biopsychosocial that the facility uses. So that's where all of the goals and objectives come from on the treatment plan. You have a question?
Yeah, more like a comment. I find that the case managers don't keep the attorney ad litems in the loop, and they don't, we don't find out about these monthly meetings. We have to sort of prompt them to let us know that there's these meetings and these reports. Are they getting trained to notify the attorney ad litems that they should be involved?
They're included in meetings to plan these things.
Okay. Again, if that's something that your case manager doesn't do, if you know their supervisor, you can go to them. If you know the director of the case management agency, you can let them know. Or you can go to your CBC. They should have a clinical utilization manager. You can ask them as well.
So that is what Millie's role is. They're a clinical utilization manager. And based on Millie's experience in residential treatment facilities, would you recommend, I know we have sort of an organizational chart that we're going to show you. When we have the issue, if we ever have the issue where a case manager doesn't get back to us about something, who at the residential treatment center do you recommend that we contact first? Do we start at the very top and work our way down, or do we go with the individual who's been working on those treatment plans with us?
Yeah, if you know the child's clinician at the residential treatment center, I would start there. If you know that therapist, call them, shoot them an email, and just say, hey, can you just give me a schedule so I can make sure I'm in those calls or I'm in those meetings?
And then this is where the two worlds collide, because we know that we're going to go to court at regular intervals. We know that we're going to get a placement order. One thing, if unfortunately there is a relationship where information isn't necessarily flowing as freely as one would like, you date certain everything. You put it in an order. Attorney for the child, guardian ad litem shall be provided. Child's treatment plan, child's discharge plan, child's advance plan, child's plan, all the plans within 10 days or within 2 days or whatever time frame you think is appropriate, then it's done. It does not necessarily make that day or that week particularly grand, but it gets better and it gets into your hands.
And I just want to say the last question, I'm very concrete. I want to make sure I answer all the questions because I don't want to get an F on this exam. What does treatment may not be experimental? That means I can't go to an EMDR training a couple weeks ago and come in and say, come on, Johnny, I'm going to do EMDR on you today. No, we don't do that. We don't do that anywhere within our CBC. We don't do anything that if it hasn't been clinically, if it's not evidence-based, and if we don't know the clinician has been using that treatment for a while and that they've been successful with it, you're not allowed to use it. So we have clinicians just learning a new treatment and saying, oh, okay, I learned this, so I'm going to try it today. That's not the way it works. Our kids are not guinea pigs.
Okay. Speaking of learning, education. All right, so education. When it comes to life in a residential treatment center, the intent of education and moving is to keep whatever is in the child's background in the child's life at the time that they enter a residential treatment center. Basically, within 10 days of a child moving to a residential treatment center, if it's in a different county or a different school district, the residential treatment center is responsible for notifying the school district of the child's arrival. But what does that mean? Just because the child arrives in a school district does not mean that they're going to be educated by the school district. Most of the time, what happens is that you will have a school district that contracts with a residential treatment center to provide educational services and supports for a child. So that means the day-to-day, an individual going to a school can be done by a residential treatment center. We know that when we're talking about school districts, we have teachers who must undergo certain certification, must have certain academic criteria. That is not the same academic criteria that is required for the individual staff at a residential treatment center who contracts with the school district to provide services for our kids. What the school district remains responsible for doing is being the person at the end of the day who is accountable if something does not get done educationally for a child. If you have a child who is entering a residential treatment center, they have access to an IEP, which means that if there's an IEP that's already in place, if a child's IEP annual evaluation is becoming due when a child is placed in a residential treatment center, the responsibility still lies with the school district to perform the upkeep and supports for those IEPs, which means that the school district is contacted and told that a child's IEP evaluation is due within the next 42 days. How would you like to schedule the re-eval and the team meeting, or whatever the subsequent meetings and documentations are from that? So that's what the school district remains responsible for doing. While the day-to-day education can be done by the facility, the school district ultimately is responsible for making sure that it gets done. Practically, Millie, how does this take itself on?
Okay, so in the RTC, the ones that I have had experience with, they are teachers that are employed through the school district. So that teacher employed through the school district but works at that RTC will come in and work with those children on their school curriculum. Okay, now it's not, you have kids different ages, different levels. So a lot of it is independent work. So it's not like, you'll have one teacher for a 12-year-old and another teacher for the 13-year-olds and another teacher for the 14-year-olds. That's not the way it works. So there'll be one teacher that will come in and work with the students.
So gentleman in the front was talking about evaluations that he's not seen or documentation that he's not seen. If you were just super curious, you can take a look at this contractual agreement between the school and the facility too. You ask for it, you can receive it. You can see what exactly the specifics are, who's supposed to do what. The other thing, when it comes to what the RTC is responsible for providing when it comes to kids and IEPs, the RTC is responsible for outlining what it is they are capable of providing when it comes to that IEP. They may not be able to provide all of the criteria in the IEP, but they must tell you what they're able to do before the child even walks foot into that facility. Okay. So we talked about the differences in the instructors, the level of certification is different in the RTCs. In Millie's experience, they have teachers who are brought in based on the contractual agreements between the school districts and the facilities. And I think we've talked about the IEP evaluations. When we talk about kids, so the important thing, the overarching thing, free and appropriate public education, FAPE, still applies. Just because a child is placed in an RTC does not mean that FAPE goes out the window. So it is not a foregone conclusion that our children will be educated at the RTC. Millie, in your experience, have the majority of kids been educated at the RTC, even though it is possible for children to go and receive their education at a traditional or districted school?
In the SIP program, because it's a locked facility, they get their education there. If it's, again, if we're going to separate them out, if it's an STGH, they can go to a school and get their education through the schooling. Okay, so again, the different levels of care, because they're in a locked facility, they can't go off and go to a public school and come back. And that's what the difference is.
And so anecdotally, you may have a child who starts out in school within the residential treatment center, and part of their treatment plan or their transitional plan can be to graduate to traditional or mainstream school. Okay, off of school, on to the other elements. So we're leaving school. The other parts of a child's life, who a child is, doesn't stop when they're in an RTC as well. The parts of their life that gave them their identity or brought them comfort remain, and they need to remain when they're in an RTC, which means that by law, there must be opportunities to participate in services and holidays and other activities. Well, what does that mean? If you place your child in front of a television and put the television on BET, that doesn't seem significant to say that you're encouraging an African-American child's ethnic heritage. How is it done?
Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm going to speak very low on this. How it's encouraged is the children, for example, their religious preferences. If they want to have books, if they want to have somebody come in and speak with them and talk with them about their religion, about what their spirituality looks like, they can have providers come in. So if a child expresses this, they can have people come in and work with them on their religion, give them a Bible, give them whatever it is that they need. It's not really emphasized, I will say. So that is probably an area that we would need to look at for the children to make sure that their needs get met.
And that candor is really important and valued because, newsflash, this is where you again are going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting as advocates for your child. You know you're going to get this, you're going to leave with this understanding of what our kids are able to receive, which means that we know in order to make sure that our kids receive it, we're going to have to sometimes draw it out of them and make sure that we're pushing it into the right direction. So if you have a child, if you know certain things about this child, or if you think this child is curious, this is where you engage with a dialogue with your child, and then you advocate for it. Did I see a hand?
Yeah, do the parents have any ability to talk about the religious ethnic heritage?
Yes.
Can they post them?
Yes. They, you're asking if they had any influence on it?
Yeah, if the parent says I want this child to get a certain type of instruction or exposure.
Yes. Yes, it definitely is.
And that's a good question and kind of a way to bring it all back when we talk about those plans, those 1,700 plans, treatment plans, clinical plans. Parents are one of the mandatory invitees, but for some sort of outstanding order that says that a parent is going to impede progress. So a parent is involved in the planning of what a child's life is like in an RTC, or at least are invited. So if something is important, you know that you can prep a child or prep a guardian or prep a caregiver or prep those other individuals who are going to be involved in that treatment planning to let them know these are the things that we need to be on the lookout for. Or if you unfortunately, go ahead, Melanie.
No, I was just going to say, and again, it's important to remember this is a locked facility. So if you're asking for that for your child, they're going to have to think outside the box. It might be like, oh, nobody's ever asked that before. Well, I'm asking it now. How are we going to make it work? And then, oh, we can't. Yeah, you can make it work because this child has that right. Okay, so again, they may look at you like you've got three heads and go, well, nobody's ever asked us that before. Well, I'm asking you now, how are we going to make it work? How are we going to make sure that this happens for this child? Okay, again, they're going to have to think outside the box.
Okay, so speaking of making it work, Taco Tuesdays may not be in the life of your child in the residential treatment center, and they're going to need to make it work. But it does not mean that a child is going to eat a ham and cheese sandwich every day. As a matter of fact, they cannot. It is against the law, because food and nutrition is a mandatory portion of planning for kids in RTCs. I have a love of food. I love food, so I find this particularly fascinating, the food and nutrition elements of the administrative code. If you love it like me too, you can read the entire administrative code. If not, these are the high points. So 3 well-balanced meals a day, it's a requirement for our kids. Snacks, also a requirement in a residential treatment center. Times for meals have to be posted. If you have a child who arrives mid-meal or just after a meal, they get a snack, automatically get a snack when they come into a facility. Menus have to be retained by the facility for a 12-month period, which means that before your child goes into that residential treatment center, you can contact the facility and say, I would like to see what you've served for the past 12 months, and they will show you. They're available for review. When it comes to our kids in a facility, they're going to know what they're going to eat that day because it must be posted 24 hours in advance. So at meal time, at dinner time, the menu for the next day is going on the wall or in a visible place for kids to see. And these are not menus that the person who fancies themselves a chef is preparing. They're done in consult with a registered nutritional specialist, most of the time a dietitian.
Correct. And if we have certain children, maybe who have diabetes, they might be on a specific diet regarding carbs and sugars. Okay, so that's all looked at as well. But yeah, the meals are posted, and they'll know, you know, what they're getting for lunch, what they're getting for dinner, what's for breakfast the next day.
And the time frames are important too. There are all kinds of rules when it comes to the amount of time in between meals. I think the longest is 14 hours between dinner and breakfast. So in theory, you can't have a staff member who's saying, oh, we're going to have dinner at 3 o'clock in the evening and we're going to have breakfast at 9 o'clock the next morning. Can't happen like that. 14 hours, I think, is the most. All right, so you know everything about nutrition now. You know that this will not be a meal that our kids have in a facility. You also know by now that this will not be a meal that our kids have in a facility. It'll be somewhere in between again. I think if you talk with our kids about life in a residential treatment center, meals are one of the areas where I wish that our kids could engage in some sort of transitional living skills, but I don't hear from my kids very frequently that they're actually involved in meal preparation. So they're going to receive what they receive, and there can be some other form of education that comes along with that, but they likely won't be preparing their own meals.
Correct. Staff prepares the meals.
Okay. Things that you must know immediately. If something happens in one of these areas, you as the child's attorney, as the child's advocate, must be notified of immediately, or the child's parent. So, 4 main areas: serious injury, bodily injury, severe psychiatric episode, or anything that involves law enforcement, you're going to know about immediately. And immediately means same day. Same day. Always same day is the notification. That notification in the administrative code actually only specifies the parent, the guardian, case management organization, or the department for immediate notice, which means that there's going to be a game of telephone involved if you were the child's attorney, the child's guardian ad litem, which means that the relationships that we have with staff members of the facility are going to become crucial. If you have engaged in regular and continuous dialogue with a staff member, that relationship building is going to pay you back because you were probably going to be contacted immediately by that staff member. But if there is a problem, an issue with case management with the department and you have not been receiving information timely, you know that you can, at the beginning of the game, make sure that your court order or the request that you're making specifies that the case management agency is to file notifications within 24 hours of any immediate incident that happens at a facility. That is probably the best thing to do right off the bat if you anticipate that there is going to be a lapse in communication. Millie, anything to add to this one?
No.
Okay. Okay. Medication, administration of medication. This one, straightforward. This one needs to be very straightforward. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you walk into a facility, there needs to be two forms of separation. There need to be two forms of separation between the medication and the child, kept in a double lock location. 2 locks separating the child from the medication. Also, the medication needs to be administered by a staff member. It is possible for a child to administer themselves their own medication if it is part of the treatment plan. It cannot be done spontaneously. There needs to be a workup to it. Everyone needs to know that this is the plan, this is the intended plan. And even if a child does self-administer that medication, they can never be left alone with that medication on their own. That medication has to be taken in the presence of a professional. Also, when we talk about the psychotropic medications that our kids get, we are not getting a prescription for kids to receive medication for 4 months. The dosage has to be continuous and they need to be regularly seen by a medical professional, by a psychiatrist, or a PCP before they are prescribed that medication again. Millie, anything to add to this one?
For the medication administration, usually it is provided by an RN or an LPN, and they will verify the child's name. Usually they will have an identification bracelet, and they will have a picture of the child in the chart. So they can verify it 3 ways to make sure you're Jane Doe, let me see a bracelet, and I can look at the picture and verify that that's you. So they have 3 checks to make sure that they're giving the right medication to the right child. They'll also tell them what they're taking, and they'll ask them, do you know why you're taking it? And then the child can say yes or no. So there is a chance there for education.
Okay. All right. Off of meds, onto the threads, the clothing part that kids really like. So we know that if kids are doing their laundry, they may have all pink shirts, but still it's going to be their pink shirts. It's going to be their own stuff that they're wearing. They get to come in with their personal items. They get to bring those remembrances of home. Everything is going to be inventoried. So the caregiver, whomever brings that child to the facility, is going to leave knowing exactly what that child came in with. It's inventoried. That inventory list can be shared with any of the parties. You can have access to that inventory list. If you want to know if that child brought a locket with him or her that was given to them by someone special, you can know that. When they come to the facility, they can receive their own individual grooming items. They can even be involved in the selection of those items if they are mature enough to do so. When they outgrow their clothing, their shoes, they need to be provided new clothing, new shoes. But how does this happen? When does this happen, Millie? We know that the term clothing voucher is something that is really exciting for our kids. They anticipate it, they expect it. It's their chance to sort of assert their individuality. How does this work?
Correct. Again, since RTC is a locked facility, very, very, very rarely will the children be allowed to go off campus. Sometimes they might get a weekend visit with a caregiver, with a family member. They might be able to get a weekend based on their behaviors if the facility thinks that the child will be safe enough. So they might be able to go away for maybe 2 days or 3 days on the weekend and come back. So in that case, they can go with their caregiver and they will be able to get the clothing that they wanted for back to school.
So that's, okay.
They allow internet access and so much stuff, so much shopping now is online. Could they just go on and kind of identify the things that they would like?
Yes, as long as they have somebody, yeah, looking over them and helping them, yes.
I mean, I think that's-
Amazon.com.
How do you address when children report that their things are stolen by someone else there? And this happens all the time, or broken by someone else there, and it results in fights and, you know.
So I will give my little 2 bits before Millie does hers. Sometimes I take my lawyer badge off and I put my Sherlock Holmes badge on, and I have gone to group homes and kind of spoken to the individuals in a group home, and then just for kicks, I'll file a writ of replevin, right? And then miraculously, a few days later, that child's belongings show up. Just like that. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And then other times it's relying upon the kindness of our community partners and replacing their things or talking to the child and incentivizing. But it almost always ends in me telling the group home staff, hey, look, you have a problem on your hands. My child doesn't feel safe and I don't feel safe. Doesn't always work, but often it does. And the writ has proven more successful than not.
That's a very good point. 'Cause I didn't even know this was an issue. No, I'm kidding. I don't even know. When you're talking about, the belongings list, I'm like, yeah, we'll see how much of that they leave with when they leave. So yeah, it is an issue, and I would bring it up to administration. And if you don't get any satisfaction that way, I would go Bethany's route.
It's a really sad thing to understand that you have to do that or wait to do that.
And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I'm very realistic, so I'm not going to tell you something that's not really going to happen.
Yeah, so I guess if we go back to the beginning of that list, maybe we convince the child that they don't necessarily want to bring that locket with them.
So
Question.
for children that are not allowed to leave, how does replacement of clothing occur as they grow out of it or as it becomes, futile?
If their behavior doesn't warrant that they can leave, their case manager will get their size and get pretty much, what kind of jeans do you like, what color shirts do you like, what kind of shoes do you want. And of course, they're going to pick Nikes or Air Jordans, whatever they are. Yeah, can't get you $250 pair of shoes, but we'll do the best we can.
And you raise another good point that I intended to come back to. That's another thing that you want to add to your laundry list of things to put in a court order. When you have your court hearing, you know that you're going to ask to be notified when certain things happen within 2 business days, that you want to have access to that child's transitional plan, to that child's treatment plan within a certain number of days. And if your child is in the residential treatment facility around the end of July, August, when back to school is occurring, that you want it in an order that case management is to take that child for back to school shopping immediately upon their discharge. Just the timing is essential. You raise a very good point with that.
Thank you for putting immediately after discharge. I appreciate that.
Got your back.
Phone calls, how do they get phone calls? Have they be authorized for that, and it depends on behavior? What's that?
Yeah, there's usually a structure because the settings are very structured as far as, wake up time, showering, school, groups, individual therapy, recreation time outside. It's a highly, highly structured setting. So there usually is a phone time within a certain period of time, maybe 7 to 8, 6:30 to 8:30, somewhere in there, depending on the facility. So there's a structured phone time. But of course, if a child is having an issue, feels like they really need to talk to mom about something, the facility can make an exception for that.
Okay.
When they call, does that be an approved list, have to call somebody?
Yes. Yeah, because, if it has to be an approved list for them to call somebody. Like if they're TPR'd, if their rights are terminated from dad, we got to make sure that who's on that list. Yes.
So, as their attorney, if I want to speak to my client, they won't be able to have a private conversation because the phone is usually in the middle of someone in an area where they don't have privacy, correct?
Usually, yes, but if you speak to the therapist on the unit, they can bring them into their office to have a private conversation. Okay, so I would just say, hey, for HIPAA reasons, I really need to talk to this kid in private, or can you bring the child into your office or in a private area where we can have a conversation?
And
then I can trust that it's just me and my client. If the therapist is outside.
The therapist might be there, but I don't know that they'd be able to hear both ways. But there probably would be somebody in the office just to make sure the child's safe.
And again, the planning thing really helps, as well as the inside guide portion too. If I notify the RTC that I'm coming to the facility in advance and the child's treatment plan supports it, private room. There's always someone who can have eyes on that child through a door, but the room is always private. Also, when it comes to the phone calls, I know that I'm not always going to be guaranteed 100% privacy when I'm talking with my child on the phone. So sometimes I just have to get myself in that car. But I try to do the planning. I see the look of that's not happening for me.
I mean, if the kid is 4 hours away, it's not as easy as you say.
Right.
Because that's where they put the kids. They put the kids 4 hours away. So,
True.
if we want to speak to them, let's say they're having a crisis, and we want to speak to them every other day, we're not going to get in the car and drive.
Right.
True.
every day.
For sure.
But we want, as attorneys, to be able to speak to our clients privately. It sounds like it's probably not going to happen.
It's not going to happen all the time. In my experience as an attorney advocating for my kids, it doesn't happen all the time. And that is something that I know is frustrating because I want what I want for my child when I want it. And I know that I'm not always going to get that, not just in RTCs, but in the dependency system in general. So I really have to balance all of everything that's going into this. They're in this facility to assist with emotional issues, with behavioral issues, with transitional issues, and I know that I have to put what I want for that child in context of that. So yeah, sometimes I've got to get in that car and drive no matter what. Sometimes I need to have that phone call, and I do everything I can through court orders and otherwise to make sure that I have total immediate access, but I'm also going to sit here and tell you that I am not batting 1,000 for what I want. I don't know if anyone can say that, but if you are, congratulations. Please teach this. We're so thankful for you. I just want to shake your hand.
You do the best you can, and unfortunately, there aren't a lot of facilities in the state of Florida. So we do have slim pickings. I prefer to have a program that's as close to the child's home as possible, but sometimes I don't feel comfortable waiting. If I have an option of this bed coming open tomorrow versus another bed closer coming open in 2 weeks, I don't know that I want to take that chance clinically, depending on where the child is at stable-wise. Okay, so if they're not very stable, I'm going to want to get that kid into that lock program where they can have a multitude of services versus waiting another week or two to get them in another program. Because I like to sleep at night, and I don't want to have something happen to a child and, something just very bad happening, and then they're Baker acted because they tried to kill themselves because I waited for another bed that's a little bit closer to home. So I always have to take that into perspective.
Is that still your discretion?
I'm sorry?
Is that your discretion on when to place and where to place?
Sometimes I usually ask the team. I usually will ask the team, what does the team think of this? Is the team okay with this placement? So it's not usually always at my discretion, but I usually will make the clinical recommendations.
What I find is the opposite. It's like, oh, we have this suitability hearing, this child needs this residential treatment center, and guess what? We don't have a bed. That's what I find. So then the kid is waiting 2 to 3 months. The kid's in crisis, right?
Yeah.
But then we don't have a placement for 2 to 3 months. So it doesn't really.
It's at the discretion.
This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's at the discretion of the facilities whether or not they will accept that child. What we do is we send them the packet with all of the child's clinical information, and it's based on that program whether or not they accept the child. So we may send it to 6 different programs, and maybe one will say yes, but we don't have a bed opening until June 4th. So then we're like, so then we do the best we can. We wrap the kid with as many services as we can, and then I just tell, the provider, make sure you keep an eye on that child. Make sure if this, and this happens, make sure the child gets assessed or Baker acted. But yeah, unfortunately, there is a resource issue.
Okay, so there are 2 parts of our training left. Restraints and seclusion, which we are going to leave for another day or for you to read on your own. We talked about the seclusion room, restraints, also clear, a little bit of a downer. big downer, but you can read about the restraints and seclusion on your own. But the last part that we're going to do, because we feel it's really essential, staff members. Who's there? Who's in the facility? Who are you going to see? So these next couple of slides are a complete list of the staff members who are going to be at a facility. We have a medical doctor. This person, let's start with the medical director. Medical director is a psychiatrist. They're going to be on site, must be board certified, must have a specific background in adolescent or child psychiatry. We have a clinical director, specialty child. Millie is most equipped to speak about the clinical director and what their role is, having been a clinical director.
So the clinical director needs to be somebody who has worked with children who are severely emotionally disturbed for a lengthy amount of time. So depending on the facility, they might ask for somebody who's worked with these type of children 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. It depends on what the facility wants. But there's a difference between working, doing therapy with kids at a school who, have ADHD, and doing therapy with kids and working with kids who are bipolar, who have PTSD, major depressive disorder. So that's the kind of experience they're looking at. They're looking at, I guess you guys would call your challenging kids, your kids with severe emotional disabilities, okay?
And I know we have a list of individuals, but I would say in my experience, the individual who I have probably the most contact with is the clinical director. I don't have that much contact with the medical director, but the clinical director knows the children, they know the staff, they know the files, and they're always there. They're on site very frequently. So this individual has the right combination of knowledge and accessibility. That's my recommendation. You certainly can do whatever you choose, but my recommendation, get to know that clinical director very well. You have a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is 24/7 on call all the time. They're going to participate in those staffings. There's no requirement, though, that the person who participates in one staffing is going to be the same person who participates in the next staffing. Depending on the RTC, they may really emphasize continuity, but you're not always guaranteed the same person.
Correct, yeah. Sometimes, if a psychiatrist is sick, if a psychiatrist is on vacation, they'll have a substitute psychiatrist. They might have a psychiatrist who works Monday through Friday, and then they have another one that does Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, medical doctor. Medical doctors don't necessarily have to be on site according to the administrative code. You can contract, or facility can contract with an MD, can contract with a PCP. An RN, they're going to supervise the other nursing staff that's at the facility, a psychologist, not full-time, part-time, as needed, based on what the facility specifies they're able to do. Direct care staff, you at a minimum are going to have 2 staff members when you have kids who are there all the time. 2 staff members. You need to have a 1-to-4 ratio when children are awake. You need to have a 1-to-6 staff-child ratio when kids are asleep. There are not any specific educational credentials that are required for direct care staff because they're not providing clinical care when it comes to the kids.
Correct.
Okay.
Most of them are high school graduates, and then backgrounds, of course, are run with them.
All right. Last staff slide. Final staff. BAs, behavioral analyst. We know that every facility does not engage in BA therapy, so they're not a mandatory staffer, part-time, as needed, based on what the facility publishes that they are capable of doing for the residents. And then we have some as-needed positions that are mandatory that the facility have access to when they're essential, when they're needed. The dietitian who looks over that menu. We have a speech pathologist or a speech linguist, a hearing specialist, a language specialist, recreational therapist as well. Those are the individuals who the facilities must have access to when they need it. And then the qualifications of the therapist. Millie, can you talk with us a little bit about that?
Okay, again, I won't sugarcoat it. Depending on the facilities, the therapists, some of them may be licensed, some of them may be licensed clinical social workers, licensed mental health counselors. Some of them may be interning, working on getting their license. But you need to have a master's, so they're not like interning for school. They're interning to get their license. So it would be a master's level clinician working towards licensure. And they do need to have have supervision by a licensed person, because that licensed person will talk to them about their cases and talk about the treatment plans and talk about the direction of where they're going with their children.
Okay. And I said that was the last one, but really, let's go to slide 35 really quickly, because it's important to know all the plans. We talked about these plans. Really, we're talking about 5 plans that you need to have for your child. You need to leave a facility with these 5 plans. I know that they're there. Treatment plan, discharge plan, community transition plan, after plan. If they have an IEP, you want that IEP too. Those are the 5 plans that you need to have for your child. Time frames for when those 5 plans are available are also in this slide. We know that when we're talking about a discharge plan, within 10 days of them walking into the facility, you need to have that discharge plan. The treatment plan, 14 days. It seems counterintuitive that a treatment plan would be longer than a discharge plan, but oftentimes it takes the facility time to determine what the exact needs are. And then there are certain times where I'm going to double back with the clinicians 2 or 3 times when they're drafting that treatment plan. But wait, there's more, but wait, there's more, but wait, there's more. 14 days they get. So definitely take the time to look at the treatment plans, to look at the plans, know exactly what they are, these 5 plans. If you doubt that you are going to receive these in a timely fashion, you want it in a court order that you're to receive these specific plans within a certain amount of time from your child entering that facility. Okay.
And I just want to say discharge planning starts the day of admission. So the day a child walks in, that clinician needs to be looking at discharge planning. What do you have to do to get out of here? How are you going to look different upon discharge than you look now? So discharge planning begins on day 1. So that's why the discharge plan is done before the treatment plan. We want to know what you want, how you're going to look, and then your treatment plan is how you're going to get there, what your goals and your objectives are going to be. So that's how you can tell as GALs if they're making progress or not, okay? So you want to look at their goals. Are they achieving those goals and those objectives? If they're not, why not? What's going on? Those are my questions. Well, Johnny is supposed to have 0 anger episodes 3 days a week out of 7. He's had anger episodes every day. What's going on? Oh, well, why not? So that's my role, is I question, what's going on? What are we doing? What can we do differently? What kind of therapy are you using? What kind of meds is he on? So you can do that as well. You need to look at those objectives and look at those goals and see whether or not they're improving. If they're not, you need to ask why. Why not? What's going on?
Any final questions? Well, we thank you for your time. We know that we did not give you a road of gold, but we did give you hopefully most of what you need to ask for to get your child as much as they possibly can receive. So thank you for coming. Thanks for being a part of our session.